stand up, like take the profession back. And by the way, I mean, you know, you don't have to have stripes or bars or anything to take the profession back. If you're an informal leader within your group, be a fucking informal leader within your group. And if, you know, if you see the profession circling the drain, don't watch it circle the drain. If you want to stick around, say something, do something. I mean, like, make a difference, get educated, you know your limits, and have these little conversations with the young people or the new people. It's your responsibility to kind of pass this shit on.
Hey guys, if you missed out on the last conference in Nashville, Tennessee, you don't want to miss out on the next one. It's April 28th through May 3rd, Orlando, Florida, the Gaylord Palms Resort and Convention Center. You made a mistake missing the last one. You don't want that to happen again on this one. 5 days of some of the best training you're ever going to experience packed into one event. We have an early bird special right now, $50 off. Use 24 early bird on our website, streetcop.com. Look for the conference, click the link, register today. If you want to get significantly better at this profession in 5 days, don't dare miss out on the 2024 Street Cop Conference.
111, 110.
Training to be a street cop.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Street Cop Training. My name is Dennis Benino, and today we have Andrew Baxter. Andrew will give you a little context of who he is and what he's done. Appreciate you being here, my brother. I know you reached out and we got together and doing some shit like this. Let's rock and roll. What's up, Andrew?
Well, hello, Dennis. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. As you said, I'm Andrew Baxter. I go by Drew Breasy on social media. And I currently, I'm on the Failure to Stop podcast network. There are two shows that I'm involved in. One of them is the Friday Breakdowns, where we just do, you know, common police-related breakdowns with a little flair of comedy here and there. And I started a show in January called The Comm Center. And that's kind of what brought us together, I think, conversation-wise. The Comm Center is... it's kind of like a tip of the hat to the dispatchers. I'm trying to get the dispatchers involved and engaged in the process and trying to kind of clear up the chasm between first responder, dispatcher, and the civilians that, you know, want to know the truth of what goes on behind the curtain.
Why appealing to the dispatcher community? What was that thought behind that?
Well, I started in law enforcement. I worked here in Florida. I started in law enforcement in 1992. I got my foot in the door as a dispatcher. I was actually convinced by my recruiter that, hey man, you know, there's not another law enforcement class starting anytime soon, so maybe you just want to get your foot in the door as a dispatcher. And it was kind of an ode to my dad. I mean, we used to sit on the porch listening to the scanner all the time, and I was like, all right, I'll bite. I mean, you know, I can learn how to be a cop up there, and you know, I knew what my end goal was. So sure enough, I started working up there as a dispatcher. I worked up there for 2.5 years before I eventually made it onto the road as a cop. And then I had a robust career. I mean, let's be frank, I had a fucking roller coaster of a career, but I mean, I had a robust career in law enforcement. And right around my 25th year, I got called by the sheriff of my county, and he said, hey man, I want you to go run the comm center. So the exact comm center that I started in, you know, 25 years later, I ended up going back up to be the administrator for. I ran communications, and I had the records section, our public records. You know,
what was your rank when you left, Andrew?
Lieutenant. So
that's cool.
I had communications and I had public records. I mean, it was, you know, we're about a 3,500 man department. So I had, I would estimate 200 civilians in my command. Like, and, you know, for all of the haters out there that think that running civilians would be a lot easier than running cops, it's quite the opposite. It's very nuanced. You know, the cops won't tell you to go fuck yourself. The civilians will. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So you got to be on your P's and Q's, and you got to, it's a test in leadership. And I'm confident I passed it. I don't think my leadership is confident I passed it, but whatever. So here we are. So 25 years later, I went back up there to run the comm center, and I eventually retired. I was moved back out onto the street. I spent another 1.5 years or so before I ended up retiring because, you know, there were just, you know, the state of the profession. and I just I was ready to go, and I left to kind of embark on a social media career where I can say whatever I want, whenever I want. And that's one of the main drivers of why I left. I mean, I was just incomplete because I think that we're stifled in the profession, and certainly stifled at certain agencies as well.
Why do you think your command didn't think you did a good job as a leader?
I think, listen, without getting too personal or opening up too many wounds, I see the difference in leading by ego and just leading. And I think that in law enforcement in general, in the profession in general, creatives tend to get canceled. Sometimes very knowledgeable people or like smart people tend to get canceled because they're a threat, or they're seen or they're perceived as a threat. So it doesn't matter what their intentions are. It doesn't matter if their whole intention to change, things just for the better or out of the protection of the agency. It's the constant backstabbing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be right at the top. It could be between you and the top. And, I think that's, as a commander or like a chief deputy, sheriff, whatever, you're getting a 10-second snapshot of somebody's work product. You're not going to spend 2 or 3 days evaluating what they are actually doing. And you're just going to take your strongest advisor's word for it and act on that. And I think that that's a fatal flaw in our profession. I think that people don't understand that there is a huge difference between being a yes man and not always being a no man. And I said no a lot because it was out of the protection of the people that work in the communication section. It was actually out of the protection of the agency itself. Like, hey, I think you really need to rethink what you're doing here, because this is not a good look for us. And that's only going to carry you so far. They just want to hear yes, 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 and then they'll get rid of you and they'll put somebody else in your place who says yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, I've been traveling this country for quite a few years now, and people think that problems like this are unique to where they work. But I got to tell you, it's the same story in every part of the country and every place. And once in a blue moon, I get just a breath of fresh air of somebody actually doing it the right way and running an organization correctly. They're few and far between. I'm not saying even street cop training has its flaws, but our intent here as a staff is always good. We always have really good intent. So no matter what kind of calls we make, whether it be good or bad, we always have good intention. And we put a lot of thought into things before we do them as well. And I've said this for years. Maybe I'll even broaden it a little bit to be more of a macro statement. If you have a brain and uncommon sense, common sense is something that's a little bit of a silly thing. It's uncommon sense.
Yeah.
Which means you could actually improve and figure things out and have solutions. Working for those who don't have that is probably one of the most frustrating things you'll ever experience in your life. And even worse than that is working for those who don't even want to hear about it and shut that shit down. So when you said I have a roller coaster of a career, I try to think about who doesn't have a roller coaster of a career. You know what I mean? Like, and I know who those guys are, and they're exactly who you think they are. On the knees, you got it. Look, I get it. You've got to appease your bosses in some sense.
Yes, you do.
But dude, I remember I had I think he was a sergeant at the time. I gotten in trouble and I had to go to some bullshit class or something like that, right? To like get training. And when I came back, he's like, you got to write a letter saying what you thought of the class. And I'm like, that's not part of the agreement. So I'm not doing that. He's like, no, you tell them on that paper that it was good and blah, blah, blah. I go, that's not, they're looking for an acknowledgement that I went. They need me to sign a paper that I went. I did go. So I just had to sign like, I went to this class at this time, at this place, and did not leave. Now, that was true, right? And he's like, no. They want to see this. And I'm like, dude, you've got to stop. Like, you are such a company man. It is so ridiculous. They don't give a fuck of my review of the class. They needed to check a box. I needed to check a box because it was all some bullshit stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a dumb solution to a stupid problem that, I had to accept I guess whatever the fuck I got dealt on that shit. So, but I'm saying, like, who doesn't have a roller coaster? You know what I mean? Like, I think about that.
I agree that exactly what you're talking about, though, that passion for, like, you know, when you had that conversation with yourself, when you walk away from that dumb conversation that you just had, you're like, either I'm going to run the world and fucking change what just happened, or I'm going to go elsewhere and give them my talents so I can change what just happened. And, you know, I think in my generation of law enforcement, we were definitely programmed to think there is no other job than, you know, what you've already invested this much into it, and you're going to have to stick around for 30 years. And, you know, and I think a lot of us bought into it. And then I had a near career ending, like, situation. I got into trouble. It involved alcohol right in the middle of it. Like, I just made supervisor, you know, I just made corporal, and I was fucking setting the world on fire. And then there were a lot of personal things that were going on. My ex-wife's mom was dying of cancer, and I was put on the midnight shift. I hadn't been on the midnight shift in, you know, X amount of years, and I wasn't getting any sleep. And yeah, I drove home one night. I pulled into a parking lot and I fell asleep behind the wheel. I had a little bit too much to drink. And of course, who knocks on my door but the rookie, you know, deputy from the same agency, and all hell broke loose from there. So I lost that promotion. I had worked fucking night and day. I worked, I kept my pager on my boxer shorts when I was in narcotics, like walking around my house. I kept my Nextel. This is how, you know, I'm dating myself. I kept my Nextel on 24/7 on that nightstand, ready to go. And, I worked hard to get that promotion, and I lost it in an instant. It was over alcohol, and I fixed that. So I spent, you know, 5, 6, 7 years in the penalty box, so to speak. And I started making my way back up, and little by little, I just, climbed that ladder again. And I ended up way ahead of where I was, originally. And I'll tell you right now, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to hurt the people I hurt when I was heavy into drinking. I've been sober for 14 years. We're coming up on 15 years at the end of the month, by the way. So I certainly wouldn't want to hurt the people I hurt, but it opened my eyes to a lot of things. One of which is, you know, is compartmentalizing or bad habits or burying pain. And I was able to get into a training situation. Like, because I was demoted, I was now a deputy, and on my path back up, I was put in the training division, where I got to, you know, meet with 30 recruits at a time and like deprogram them from this thought that, you know, there's only one career and there's only one life, and you're going to be just fine in this agency. No, you got to cover your ass, and you got to follow the rules, and you got to do this and that. So I genuinely believe that I would not do a thing to change that, because it opened my eyes, getting back to your point, to the fact that I'm marketable anywhere. I can do, you know, this job gave me a great foundation, but it's fucking me. You know, I didn't identify as the cop, or I didn't identify as the deputy or the corporal that got demoted or whatever. I've always been me, Andrew Baxter, who just happens to, you know, have been evolved into Drew Breasy, but you know, I'm fucking me. And that's not going to change. That's locked into place.
I remember, obviously, I think everybody goes through those moments where, you know, you're just involved in hot and heavy IAs. You know, I mean, I can't go into too many details of it, because believe me, a lot of it was motivated to get back at me, calm me down, shit like that. Right.
Sure.
And I'm not saying everything that I ever did in my life, I don't have to accept responsibility of my own actions.
Yes.
Certainly not pawning that off. I will acknowledge those things. But I remember going through the jackpot for the first time. I was in the jackpot, and, you know, I learned pretty early on that your best bet is to get an attorney as fast as possible.
Yes.
So, I mean, I try to give that advice to a lot of people. I have a guy right now. I was literally talking to him this morning, and it's actually a known thing. He didn't do anything wrong, but it's not a not known thing. And I said to him, dude, I know it's going to pain you to fork out the money to go retain counsel, because your protection plan is going to be garbage. They're not going to give you fucking anything. You're going to get like this guy off a list, and typically, like, you know, once in a blue moon, you get a decent one, but typically it's going to be just some fucking huckster. who's not going to know what the hell they're talking about. You need to go get yourself a real attorney because cheap is expensive in this game, and you can always pay this off, but you'll at least still have a job. And he said, I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. I thought these people had my back. So, well, clearly, now. But for those who have been in the jackpot or in the jackpot now, him and I both have a lot of time in this industry. I remember something that I'll never forget my attorney said. And he said to me, I just had a internal with a guy's lieutenant of internal affairs who I represented like 15 years ago. And at that time, he was looking at termination. So we were laughing about the fact that he's now the lieutenant of internal affairs and they wanted him gone 15 years ago.
Right.
And, it was a political hit job. Just somebody didn't like him and they went after him hard. And so he said, I tell that to you because I think you're still going to have a great career. And, clearly you pissed some people off here pretty goddamn good. We'll get you through this and, try to shoot for the best outcome. And, same thing when you say 5 or 6 years, you had the cloud over your head. Somebody said something right after that. They go, you'll be in the hot seat just until somebody else in the hot seat. You're just one coworker away doing something fucking completely stupid and all eyes are off you and now on that person. And, I don't want anybody ever getting in trouble, but I have no idea why police officers are their own worst enemies at times. If you really think of some of the stories, you're like, how did we end up with some of these stories? I mean, some of them are just, and it's all off duty. It's never like on duty, right? It's just all off duty. Like, how did we end up with some of these crazy ass stories? I try to understand the psychology of this profession. And, now I'm 40, almost 42 years old. You're 73 or something like that. Right, Drew?
71.
Yeah. And he's 55, guys. So we're just goofing around. You like just so much more wisdom and just like, God damn, like what the fuck? Yeah, sometimes I think I'm like, what a crazy, like, what's the psychology behind some of the stories that come out of this stuff and how people get themselves jammed up? It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I think I'm telling you, like, I don't use this as a buzzword like it's being used today, but I'm going to use it as a buzzword. I mean, a lot of this shit is trauma based. I'm just saying that, we see things or listen to things or witness things that the human brain's not supposed to process. So, we use dark humor to get it out, or we use alcohol or infidelity or gambling to get it, to keep it down. So, shit spirals out of control pretty quickly, especially when you think you're invincible. You know what I mean? So you have a couple drinks and then you're like, yeah, I mean, if I get pulled over, I'll be fine. You don't think about the minivan that you run into and wipe out an entire family. You think about, being pulled over and quote, being fine, like you'll be taken care of. Well, let me tell you something. Let me tell something to the general public. Taken care of is not a thing anymore. I mean, number one, there's body cameras everywhere, and it was never excusable to begin with. But number one, there's body cameras everywhere, and number two, like it doesn't happen that way. It's just there's too many eyes and too many ears, and the generations are being brought up a little bit differently. And again, a lot of people aren't considering this a career; they're considering it a job. So. I'm not making any excuses for anybody, but I can say that, you go out, you have a few drinks, and then next thing you know, you're in forgotten land. Like you're not worried about the trauma anymore because you're not feeling any pain. And then you find yourself arguing with somebody over a parking space, and a little pushing and shoving match ensues, and you forget you're a cop. And then you realize when you have handcuffs on you, fuck, now I remember I'm a cop. I shouldn't be here.
Or the next day when the regret, you know what I mean? I just think about the regret that people have, because I really am not quick to judge. Some guy sent me something on Instagram today. It's about like some kid at some kind of drag show with a loudspeaker, and like the cops come over, like tell him to turn it off. He's like reading Bible scriptures.
Yes.
And, so the guy says, oh, what do you think of this? And I said, how could I cast judgment? All I know is I saw a minute and 10-second video.
Yeah.
So how many times was he warned before? What was he told about what he's saying versus what the cops are doing? I don't know. Let's hear there's probably a whole other side of the story. So to have judgment on either end, and he wrote to me, he goes, well, it looks like it's religious persecution to me. And I actually said to him, I completely disagree with that statement. That is not what it is. There's not a cop in the country who's looking to persecute somebody over their religious beliefs. Trust me, there's not one. This is not like the UAE where there's actually strict Islamic rules.
Yeah,
right.
Walking around. Yeah,
bro. If you actually read, if you go to like a country that is on Islamic law, there's some real. You have to get if you go to UAE, you've got to get a permit to drink. You can't just go to a bar and drink. You have to get I was reading this stuff the other day. If you want to stay, there's rules on it. I think they eased up on one, but there was a video of, remember, like a British woman holding like a phone camera in front, like at the UAE cops, like, the Emirates cops.
Ooh.
And they put her in prison for a year, dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah,
we were in Greece in May, at the end of May, early June, and I was with a lot of people from here. I was a lot of Americans, and you don't smell weed in Greece. So somebody had brought that up in the group that I'm with. We had like 65 people with us. Like, hey, you don't smell any weed here. I'm like, it's because if you get caught, you're doing 4 months in jail. They're like, that's fucking crazy. I'm like, this is a different country. Do you understand that? This is they're not playing that shit here. They're just not. You can't even, the gun laws in Europe are so strict. You think we have strict gun laws in New Jersey? Forget it. There, you've got to get a permit. You can only have a gun essentially if you live on a farm, and it can carry 3 rounds maximum. So you can get like a shotgun, no rifles allowed, completely illegal. A shotgun, 3-round max limitation, no handguns, no nothing. And dude, the Europeans hate guns, by the way, like all of them. Like I was asked by the Greeks and Italians that I met is like, aren't you guys nervous with like the guns in the United States? The gun violence is crazy. I'm like, you guys are just being portrayed like it's just this constant battle. Like we're in a cold war over here.
Yeah,
dude, I carry a gun every day of my life. I have a substantial amount of guns. Like telling these guys like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, they're like, you're not nervous? I'm like, no. And they're like, well, what's the solution? I'm like, there's 55 million registered gun owners in the United States of America. There is no solution because we can't eradicate guns. It's impossible. But instead, we'll do magazine restrictions like that, because that's made a big difference in our crime.
How about you start prosecuting the repeat offenders, or how about you not let them out on no bond, or you know what I mean? Wow. Like
there's no, it's listen, I'm not going to go down that road, but some of these people are just out of their goddamn mind. They make no sense. I don't even know who they're pandering to if they're pandering to people. I have no clue how we have zero common sense. But I will say this: looks like the NYPD is starting to fucking do a little work again. I don't even catching the videos. They seem to be not playing too many fucking games anymore.
I'm proud to see it. I mean, like, stand up, like take the profession back. And by the way, I mean, you don't have to have stripes or bars or anything to take the profession back. If you're an informal leader within your group, be a fucking informal leader within your group. And if you see the profession circling the drain, don't watch it circle the drain. If you want to stick around, say something, do something. I mean, like, make a difference, get educated, know your limits, and have these little conversations with the young people or the new people. It's your responsibility to kind of pass this shit on. So, I mean, like, I firmly believe that, when COVID hit, which is a whole different ball game, and I was affected in a few different ways in this, but that was George Floyd era, right? So we were back to being racist again, and so when we couldn't do any kind of enforcement or whatever, they had no way to vilify us. So the ingenious way of vilifying us is saying, okay, cops, what we want you to do now is go in and enforce mask rules, or go in and enforce, like, there's more than 4 people sitting in this library or on the beach or whatever. And to the point that you just made about the guy in Wisconsin with the megaphone preaching the Bible, the cop is vilified in this situation. Somebody actually out there with common sense that says, well, we addressed common sense a minute ago, but somebody that said, this looks like religious persecution. No, this is a cop that was told to do that. Do you think that the cop is having an internal struggle as it is? And this is all going into the deterioration of the profession. These are the struggles that a cop has. It's not just, the blood and guts, or the people screaming because you're taking their mom and dad to jail or whatever. It's all this, like, scrutiny that we're receiving for doing a fucking job, for raising our hands and volunteering to say, hey, if the bullets start flying, I'm actually going to run towards the source of the bullets. You just duck down. And I get why people left in an exodus. I understand that. And I just wonder how much of it is programmed, how much if it is to disrupt law enforcement, to get us to break up the system, so to speak.
Whatever the biggest thing that's running everything is, the media is their resource to shift it and sway it any way they want.
Absolutely.
And when you understand that, I'm not going down these conspiracy theory roles, but you think that there's not somebody like playing with the dials behind the scenes, you're out of your fucking mind.
You're right.
And I'm sure it's more than one person. It's a huge conglomerate of people, and people that you in a million years could never get to, or you wouldn't even know who they are.
Right.
And if you get close enough to shit like that, it looks like they eliminate motherfuckers pretty quickly. So that's why I'm like, man, I'm good. Right. I'll just make sure that my men and women here in the blue just acknowledge that the media is employed to shift and sway the thoughts of mindless Americans. And they listen because they're idiots.
And they listen. Yes.
So don't be caught up in the rhetoric of like not being an independent thinker. My suggestion is to put your own thoughts on things. You don't have to be a psychopath, but non-judgment's important. So anytime I'd see somebody get in trouble, I would say to them like, hey, man, I can't talk to you about what happened. Obviously, it's against the rules, but look, man, everybody makes mistakes. Could have been anybody, right? People just, I know somebody who's in a little bit of a jam personally right now. And the fact that this person is just being vilified by everybody in his family, it frustrates me. And I said to him, like, I think it's ridiculous that people just don't have compassion and just go right to judgment. I don't think what you did was that outlandish. And compassion and non-judgment is probably one of the most powerful tools you can possess as a human being. And it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of mind shifting to see things that way. I mean, I try to see literally everything. Why did that happen? Why is that person doing that? Why does that person look like that? Why does this happen? Why did that guy do that? Who's kicking their butt behind the scenes? All people want to do is be seen, validated, and heard.
But brother, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is why I wouldn't change anything that happened to me. Well, I say happened to me, that I caused in my career, because it humbled me. This job, as you know, will humiliate you exactly when you need to be humiliated. Something or someone will come along and humiliate you. And that's exactly what happened. And it brought me back to a place of compassion. Like, listen, you can just, you got a loudmouth kid at a college party who's just running his mouth and he smells like weed. Yeah, you can throw him in jail for disorderly conduct or disorderly intoxication. You can search his pockets and find that weed and all that other stuff just because he pissed you off. What you're not realizing, though, or maybe you are, is that affects him. It affects his family. It affects his future. It affects. So, the kid's being 18, like you were never 18 yourself, and he's running his fucking mouth. He could be embarrassed in another way, I'm sure, but the pen is mightier than the sword. So you stroke out this, we used to write them anyway, this criminal report affidavit to put this kid in jail. And now he can never, apply to be that officer that might change somebody's life later on. And I do get that people need to take responsibility for their own stuff, but there are reasons behind what people did. Just like I tried to say, I'm not pleading with anybody for sympathy, but there was cancer going on. There was a divorce pending. There was no sleep going on, and there was heavy drinking based on trauma shit that I was processing for years and years and years. So there was a reason why I was out drinking and driving. It wasn't just because like, let me play the lottery today and see if I, can hurt myself or somebody else. So all of that went into being able to reevaluate. Like, before you put handcuffs on somebody, just take a deep breath for a second and make sure, is this the proper course of action? I mean, did they really steal this because, they just wanted to be a menace to society and they need to go to jail? Or did they steal it to feed their family? I mean, it's the old ethical, debate of the mother stealing a loaf of bread at the Walmart or whatever. It does things like that should open your eyes and bring you to a sense of compassion and understand this job is not an us versus them. If I could, explain that to every academy class, I attempted to, but this will never be an us versus them. And the job will make it so that you're tricked into believing that it's us versus them. And it's not. Every single case that you're about to deal with is completely different, every incident. So if you just understand and you have the compassion and you're able to communicate effectively with people, and sometimes they're going to tell you that they committed the crime and why they committed the crime, and then you take them to jail, but it's also going to be a quality report. It's going to be better testimony in court. It's all about compassion. It's about a connection, a human connection. We're not out, we should never let our authority overshadow our service. That's what it boils down to. We are servants and we need to serve. You can't let your authority overshadow that, or your ego for that matter.
Hey guys, follow us on all social media platforms to include Instagram, Twitter, Facebook group. We have so much information going out every single day, and we don't want you to miss out on any of that stuff. So check it out. Go give us a follow. You want to know why I practice non-judgment? My number one factor of why? Want to take a guess?
Go for it. Because you've been judged, probably.
Because I don't want to be judged. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
we're all human beings and we're all going to make mistakes. And, there have been some significant moments in the past. I've had very difficult past 2.5 years of my life, and very, very difficult. And, there's just some stuff I can't share publicly. People know. I don't think there's some things that people know, some people don't. I have more stuff going on in my life right now. Essentially, I leave here and 5 to 8 times a week watch a family member dying. And that's it's just the visits are that common now that I have to go every day. Unfortunately, there's a couple days I can't go this week, but it's if you're paying attention to the podcast, you probably know who it is. But I'm watching that now. That's just on top of everything else that I've got going on. So there might be times that I misbehave, but I really, really try to employ and practice non-judgment. And I feel like the more I don't judge, the less I am judged.
The more you're going to learn as well. This is where you develop the wisdom from. You just, if you let your guard down to the point where you're still self-protective, but you're able to take in knowledge from somebody, it makes it that much easier the next time when you run across a scenario that's similar. And you can choose to edit this out or not. Listen, there's a joke within my family that, like, whenever I live here in Florida, my family lives in Western New York. That's where I was born and raised. And anything significant that ever happened in my life, like big things, somebody would get sick back home, and I'd either have to cancel or whatever. So I'm not telling you this story to one up you, I promise.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
I was getting ready to do this podcast the first time you were stuck in Puerto Rico. And I learned that my mom was going to be on hospice the previous Thursday. And I was like, here we go. This is it. Like, I didn't know that we were going to have to postpone, but I was like, fuck, here we go. Like, this is the big event in my life, because I can, I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but this is a big deal to me. Like, street cop training.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude. Thank you, man. I don't feel that way at all about myself or this thing.
You should.
Well, thank you. I think I'm overburdened with humility. It may not appear that way because I teach with emotion and passion, but I just don't think I'm anybody fucking fancy at all. And for the guys who saw me Saturday night at the East Bar at DJ's, thank you for not filming me this time around. Appreciate that. I didn't want to be on your Snapchat. I was just trying to let loose and try to enjoy myself a little bit. No judgment. But anyway, yeah. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Continue on.
So Frankie, thank God, sent me the message that said that you're stranded in Puerto Rico and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not trying to put your business out on the streets, but
no, I was stranded. I had to go there for a business meeting.
Oh, okay. And I was like, I was like, this is actually kind of a godsend. I didn't. So I'm holding my cards close to my chest. So sure enough, the date rolls around that we were supposed to do the podcast, and my mother died.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
It's okay. Listen, I'm completely at peace with it. So the day that I was supposed to do the podcast with you originally is the day my mother died. So
that's horrible.
It is, but I get it. Like, we all go through it. And the thing is, like, this is why I say I'm not trying to one up you. I said my goodbyes to her over a year ago. She was at the point where we were having the same conversation within the conversation we were having. I mean, she she had no memory. She roamed the plains for 92 years. I mean, she had a good life. Yeah. So, but her memory was like zero. It was at zero. She would remembered her little baby boy, and that's about it. So, you know, it was kind of a, man, this is hard to say. It was kind of a blessing that she's up there with my father now and all that. But, you know, I'm just saying we all go through it. And it doesn't make it any easier. And there was no preparing for it. And in fact, one of the biggest days of my retired career was what it was supposed to be was actually something completely different. It was the day I learned my mother died, you know? So these things have a way of making you humble or just making you realize. So you're right on point with, you know, throw away the judgments. If you just kind of live your life kind of clean and just listen to what somebody has to say. I don't give a shit if they're Democrat, Republican, because that's what we've come to, liberal left or right or whatever. Just everybody's got something to say and everybody's got a story. Just hear them out. You don't have to fucking sway the world into your opinion.
You know, I also think that this kind of led my brain into saying of how I really have learned to not expect anything from anybody. I mean, at this point now, I get promised so many things. It's a very interesting time. It's been interesting for a while, but even right now, it's interesting. And so, you know, I'm like, if it happens, that's great. If it doesn't, then so be it. That's a real nice way to live because I don't live that way. I'm a man of my word. And I always tell people, you know, you could find people that don't like me, which is fine. I have no interest in trying to appease the entire world.
I'll live.
However, you will never find somebody that tells you I'm a piece of shit. Like, because of the actions that I did. Like, nobody is ever going to say, like, nah, he was a rat fuck. Like, he stepped on people's backs. He stabbed people in the back. He kicked people while they were down. You know, man, there's so many opportunities now for us to misbehave. And I just try to remind everybody, like, that's just not the way we're going to win. It's not for us. And you know, we want to default to that as human beings of like, fuck that guy. I'm like, hey, guys, just let it be, man. Like, it's all good. Like, there's obviously a lot of pain behind things like that. I don't know why that person's acting that way. Life is just a very interesting ride. And, you know, people just have to understand you're going to have to roll with the punches. And there's no giving up, rolling over, and dying. You just keep moving forward. And sometimes it's very thick brush, and sometimes it's clear open fields, and you're breathing. You could smell the ocean air coming off. Like, it's just that's how life is.
Listen, I say that about loyalty. Loyalty is an 8-lane superhighway that runs north, but it's a fucking overgrown footpath that runs south. And you know, we're pretty short on machetes. Like, that's so. To your point, if you wash away expectations of anybody, if you have no expectations, period, like I had no expectation of this, you know, coming to fruition today, just based on the fact that anything could happen. Like you could be called to whatever. If you have no expectations, it's very hard to be disappointed in life. And you do with age, and you know, when your EQ develops, you do realize that there are people that hate you, but who gives a fuck? Like, why am I? Nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent, is that famous Eleanor Roosevelt quote. I saw it, you know, walking on Tampa River Walk one day, and it stuck with me. Like, why am I going to give away my happiness or anger? And I'm not telling you like I live this perfect life and I don't dwell on shit. I mean, I do that all the time. I get into war in the comments section of a stupid Instagram post because I don't know. I just want to exercise my my free speech, or I want to exercise my point of view. But washing away expectations, living judgment free, it's all going to sustain life. It's all going to make you live longer. It's just going to make you feel better. You sleep deeper. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, just you know, live your life, and whatever anyone else thinks of you, I mean, they can kind of go fuck themselves. And this, again, we come back to like how and why I retired. This to me was my ultimate goal. Like, listen, if I'm not the fit here, or you don't see it because of whatever your reasons are, I can go set the world on fire somewhere else. I'm not tied to you. Like, I don't, some of those people are in the positions they're in because of good timing. That's it. That's the only difference between me and them. Our abilities are the same. Our intelligence levels are the same, the whole 9 yards, but they had great timing, and they know who to say yes to and who to say no to. And I didn't. That doesn't mean I can't go, carry this knowledge somewhere else. And I'm not going to sit with a head full of criminal justice or law enforcement knowledge and just let it rot in my brain while I, sit and eat bonbons on the couch in retirement. Like, I'm going to share it. I think, it was given to me, and it's nothing for me to hold on to. I think I need to pour it back out into the world.
There was a Instagram post that I put up on Saturday because a guy had reached out to me and said his chief had denied training because our instructors here look too intimidating.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how you would like us to look as law enforcement instructors, but I don't, fluffy, maybe like Barney, like, I don't know what this chief expects. And, a lot of people were writing and commenting on that about how bad their agency is. And if you look at my comments back, I just wrote, leave,
Yeah. Go.
leave. In a time when you have options, I find it just so amazing that the fear of the unknown is the thing that's crippling people to remain unhappy. It's wild to me. And although I am this police trainer and building this company and a father and all these other things that I am, I think one thing that I am the most is trying to understand human psychology. I mean,
Yeah.
why have a good career when you could have a great career? My wife's friend came over on Saturday, and she said, I work at this school district. I didn't know what she did for a living. I know her a few years now. Nice girl, my age. And she goes, oh, but I'm going to take a job like 10 minutes from here, but it's a little bit of a pay cut. And I said, Lisa, I am so about pay cuts for the quality of life improvement. She goes, well, I won't have to travel. I go an hour and a half each way where I go now. So it's only 10 minutes. And I go, oh my God, like, it's a dream. Like, who cares? Like, the pay cut in your field can't be that substantial where you're going to have to sell your house. I mean, you aren't going from making 1.6 million to 4.3 million or vice versa. Right. You're talking about. So for me, the variable of not wanting to endure the pain, the short-term pain of change to achieve greatness is flabbergasting. And I cannot figure out why people have such a problem with this. And I don't know where we were failed in society. One, certainly the school districts, no question about it. And she's a counselor. So I said, and I was actually pleased to hear that she wasn't giving advice to people to go to college unless they had like 100% scholarships. I'm like, this is so super smart. And I said, but the advice that you give these kids is just your perspective. Think about the disservice you're doing to them because of what you believe is successful. And I said, right. Take the town, 2 towns away from us. Very, very exclusive. I mean, I live in a nice town. This is an exclusive town. I'm talking like big money, dude. $15, $20 million homes. It's huge money. And I said, I promise you there's not a kid there from that high school who's graduating saying, I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to be a plumber. I'm going to be an electrician. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. You're telling those kids that because that's the perspective of like where there's a good job. My son this morning, my hand to God comes out to me and he said, Dad, like he's 7. What's like a job that like pays the most? And I went, what do you mean? He's like, what job pays the most? I go, there's a lot. He goes, well, like what's one? I go, digital marketing. And he's like, what is digital marketing? I'm like, well, you got to figure that out, man. But like that pays a lot. I've 50 friends that are digital marketers and they're all millionaires. So like digital marketing's one, but they don't tell you, like, you don't sit in high school and they're like, hey, you're from a lower middle class family. Like, do you ever fuck around like digital marketing and like how to hack da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? So my advice to people is like, if you have kids, like I would never dare tell my son being a lawyer, being a doctor is going to equal success. It is not true. Most lawyers make less than probably most cops. No bullshit. Right? Like maybe not in Florida, but here, right? They're settling contracts, $150,000, $108,000 a year for patrolmen.
Right.
So you got lawyers who most lawyers probably make $100,000 a year. That's real. So I don't know why people correlate this 8 years of school, 7 years of school to I'm going to be rich. No. They're just the best in the industry. Just like any industry. They're the best. So anyway, to come full circle, I guess what I'm saying is, and I hate to go on these ADHD rants. Why are people not willing to endure the pain to achieve the greatness? And it's beyond me. And these guys and these girls will go back to the same shitty agency that they fucking can't stand for the next 20 years.
You can't put a price on happiness.
No.
You can't put a price on stable mental health. Like it's, again, we get, it's a buzzword in the industry now because administrators get to say, well, we're doing something about the mental health, when all they're doing is throwing around a buzzword. They're not really doing anything about it.
No,
but
they don't do anything. Well, let me just stop you. Let me just jump in real quick and you continue.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing anything about anything, just so we're clear.
Dude, this is what you're talking in my good ear here. Without bashing where I worked, I will tell you this. I've always come from the foundation of like, figure out what you're good at and be the best at it, right? So where I worked, they proclaimed, when they kind of changed leadership, our two best things are leadership development and mental health. Well, let me tell you, I left a couple $100,000 on the table in the drop program, in the deferred retirement option program, because I had to get the fuck out of there. Now, a lot of it was environmental because of the state of law enforcement, but the shit that the Reindeer Games that went on, that the high school cafeteria mentality of some of the people that are in charge of protecting an entire county of 1.6 million people, the bullshit, petty fucking games that affect the mental health of the line employee or even the middle manager like me, is astonishing. So the two things that you do best are leadership development and mental health, yet you implore your leaders to play fucking Reindeer Games. Those are the two things that you do the worst. So again, to combat that, I just don't need to stick around in that environment. And again, sticking true to my word, you can't put a price on happiness and you can't put a price on mental health. If I got a good, clear mind, I can make the drop money that I missed out on. I can go do whatever I want. The world is my oyster. I can go do whatever I want. Now, I understand that I was in a different position than a lot of people, but when you're saying it, when Heather's saying it, when the people on your staff are saying it, why are you tied to one place that's making you unhappy? It's, like even personally, why are you tied to one partner or marriage that's just making you unhappy? Are you doing it to keep up appearances? When are you going to break the cycle and just understand you're in control of your own destiny? Once you've turned power over to somebody else to control your destiny, you're fucked. You're destined to do whatever they want you. They're destined to control your happiness, and they're going to pull the levers and they're going to maximize anything that makes them happy. So it's all about independence. Like, just, it's not an easy jump to grow a set of balls, but you got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, watching my family member in the care facility. So I go visit this person. I was just say it's my father. And there's a guy in the same room with him in this care facility. Mm-hmm. And I said to the nurse last week, I said, that guy doesn't wake up so much. Like, he's always sleeping when we're there. She goes, I think he's just done with life. I think and the guy's not like, my father's in really bad shape. Really bad. I mean, it's very interesting how at this point of his sickness, I see him with a fresh set of eyes as an innocent soul versus, and my brother came over last night, which we don't see him too often. And he said something about my father to my kids. And I'm like, hey bro, like, that's their grandfather. They don't need to know like what he was like as a fucking father growing up. So just cut this shit. He doesn't have kids, so he doesn't know. And I'm like, they're too young to be telling him what your father was like versus me. I'm obviously this way because I know what that was like.
Yeah, right.
That's why dad's the most fucking fun on earth. I guess the point I was getting to was that whole place are people who have no more options. It's just over. And at the end of life, nothing was ever that scary. and you don't get to hit a restart button. You just don't. You don't get to sit there and go, okay, God, this is the end for me. Let me do this again. I've learned some real lessons now. And all you can do is look for guidance that speaks to your soul and follow it. And I got to tell you, I think that taking risks, doing things that are uncomfortable are sometimes disappointing, but at the other end of the spectrum, just very rewarding. And I use examples of my life and other people who have written in who said, I took a leap of faith. It was the best thing I ever did. I can't thank you enough. I heard what you were saying. And I implore people, based on the fact of happiness, to take those leaps of faith and trust yourself. You got to trust yourself. You got to know who you are. You got to know, not everybody needs to, but if you're that person, you know you can handle it. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And I can't emphasize that. And I just don't want to live in a life of regret. I just don't want to, dude. I don't want to just say, man, I wish I had so many talents, so many things I could have offered. I could have made a change. I could have made a difference. And it's fucking painful. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not. Doing this at this point now, it's so painful, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, this is my, like, you've hit on kind of one of my mantras. Like, obviously there's some type of glass ceiling. Like, I wasn't going to go any further than what somebody else decided. So that's exactly what I'm saying. The only way you're going to smash it, the only way you're going to be able to live free and share what you got is out on your own. So fucking go do that. Like, just go be out on your own and share it.
What's crazy for me is, like, as wild as this sounds, I technically, all my friends for law enforcement are at the retirement age. So we're all early to mid 40s. It's coming up, couple years. And so these guys are like talking about the retirement. I'm like, guys, like, do you look at us? Like, we're young men.
I know.
Guys, we're like, you could comfortably knock out another 25, 30 years of working. So when you talk about, like, what your retirement plans are, like, dude, you're in better shape now than you were 23 years ago when I met you. You don't have gray hair. I mean, look at me, dude. I feel better now, oddly enough, than I did when I was 19.
Yeah.
And you guys are talking about, like, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Like, you have another 40 fucking years to live, if not more. You might have 55, 60 more years of life. You're telling me for the next 55 or 60 years, you're not going to work? Like, bro, like, and like, you think that you already completely, no, like, let's get to it, dude. And I'm telling these guys, like, yo, start researching what you want to do next. You get a whole nother shot at being somebody completely different. You get to hang up the fucking belt. You don't got to even stay in this profession. You can go be like an ice cream curator at a fucking, like, you could do anything you want. So you get a whole nother crack with all this wisdom now and go do anything else. You can be a landscaper. I mean, you can be a digital marketer. You can be a teacher. Tony Danza is a teacher. People don't even know who Tony Danza is. He's a teacher in Philly. You know that?
Who's the boss? Yeah.
Tony Danza was a major A-list celebrity for like 40 years in American culture. Right. So Tony Danza is like 80 years, 70 something years old. He just is a high school teacher, dude. That's what he wanted to do. He did what he did and went and did something else. A lot of those people do that. You know, you know how many people we have that are actually cops that had a previous life before this, or were cops and now are like A-list celebrities,
right? Or
B-list or C-list celebrities, are doing, you know, whatever, man. It's just, I don't know why people are like thinking that, like, this is who I am. This is what I'm limited to. No, man, you're in a fucking great country. You know, so I don't know. We're on this rant and rave. Drew, why don't you promote some shit before we fucking wrap this motherfucker up?
All right. You can catch me on Failure to Stop. We have a YouTube channel, obviously, called Failure to Stop, and we do live shows probably 5 nights a week. There's 6 different hosts. Again, I'm involved in 2 of those. One of them being the Comm Center, which is an ode to the dispatchers. And then that's Thursday nights. We do it live at 8 p.m. It drops as a podcast on Saturday mornings. You can always catch the replay on YouTube. Fridays, I do Friday breakdowns with Eric Tansey, and we cover all the police related news. And that's done live at 11 a.m. And that drops as a podcast almost immediately. So listen, go to Apple Podcasts or go to any major podcast platform, to include YouTube Music, and you can listen to Failure to Stop there. I got to tell you this too. I'm not I'm not making a dime on this whatsoever. There's a guy named Ricardo Martinez. He's an advocate. He was a 911 professional for years and years and years. He's got his own podcast. I'm not going to plug that, but he assembled this book. It's called Imagine Listening. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday. And it's a very novel concept. It's just a collection of stories, put, text over photos that he's collected over the years from dispatchers who are just trying to get the poison out, and they'll write out the story for him. And it is like an eye opener to give to any administrator in a law enforcement agency. It's a good stocking stuffer or whatever, because it really brings home what the dispatchers, particularly the 911 emergency call takers, endure. Like, people make this assumption that because they're in the air conditioning, that everything is safe, and very little to do. First responder status has very little to do with the acute danger of bullets being shot at you or walking into a burning building. It's the long-term accumulation of trauma. It's the adrenaline that eats away at your heart and your lungs and all these other things and all this other stuff. Dispatcher trauma is the exact same trauma as any other first responder. In my opinion, they should be classified as first responders. I can give you 1,000 reasons why. I can share my promotional, to be promoted to captain research project I did called Mitigating Stress and Trauma in the Civilian Sector, where I delve deep into dispatcher trauma and its effects on people. It causes depression. It causes regular suicides, just like anybody else. It causes, the obesity, depression, all the things. But the difference between 911 dispatchers and cops is pretty simple. Dennis, you and I, we show up to a shift and we're supposed to cover 4 zones. One guy called out sick, one guy's in training. You and I can cover it. We're good. We'll be okay. We're probably both pretty good cops anyway. If you think that's happening in the communication center, it ain't. Somebody's got to sit their butt in the seat that mans the radio. Somebody's got to sit their butt in the seat that mans the 911 position. And the problem is this accumulation of trauma that causes sickness, causes them to have a high absentee rate. It causes them to churn. They're always quitting. And what it's doing is it's creating an environment where there's mandatory overtime for people that are already burnt out. And it's causing health issues beyond. So when you and I start the conversation with let go of your judgments and just be a humble human and take a perspective from somebody else's shoes, these people are disrespected, overlooked, and completely underpaid and overwhelmed. And it'll be my last dying breath that I'll be shouting from the mountaintops about how much more we need to pay attention to these people, even from an agency standpoint. If you're an agency head somewhere and you think that it's a wise idea to have a maladjusted, from a mental health standpoint, a maladjusted call taker being the first voice that the public hears, whether they're calling non-emergency or 911, if you think that's a good idea, good on you. It's a horrible idea, one. And two, if they're short-tempered and they start having this interaction with the citizen, what do you think that how do you think that they're going to be when the cop shows up? You knock on that door and they're already agitated. So does that lead to a use of force? Does that lead to the cop having to talk somebody down? Or, there's a million reasons I can give as to why they are the way they are. Nobody, not many people tend to listen to them, but just from a business standpoint, you've got to think as an agency head, you've got to take care of these communications people. They're the first voice. It's going to become more and more prevalent that they're knocking out because of PTSD, because that's becoming a workers' comp issue. Look at it from a business standpoint, however, but just from a humanity standpoint, get into your communication center and live a day or two up there. Don't just assume that they're just, they're clerical, they're civilian. Nothing drives me more crazy than hearing, they're civilians or they're clerical. So you mean to tell me that the chief secretary and the 911 operator, they're on par? They have the same stresses. They have the same, because they're getting paid about the same, and they're getting about the same retirement, and they have access to about the same mental health. You know what I'm saying? It's ludicrous. These are first responders, and they should be treated as such. That's my opinion.
Very well said. And I couldn't agree more. And I couldn't, you could ask any dispatcher that I ever worked with. They still to this day have a great bond with them. We had a lot of fun, and, always spent a lot of, as a matter of fact, sometimes they were dicks and I wasn't, but that's just how it goes sometimes. But yeah, I always, very fond relationship with my dispatchers. I enjoyed them tremendously. And, so yeah, you're right. I mean, they just need to be thanked and appreciated for what they do. A really nice job. They really do.
Yeah.
All right. I gotta get the fuck out of here, Drew.
Oh man, I appreciate this opportunity. I'm looking.
Yeah, no, it's great, dude.
I really want to know more about the university you got coming out. So I want to talk to you about that at some point.
Yeah. Dude, I'll come on your podcast if you want, whatever you want.
Oh, fucking A. All right.
Just tell Frankie, he'll set it up.
Okay, good.
Hey guys, check out our upcoming training at streetcop.com. Don't forget, we have 50 instructors nationally teaching a variety of topics. These are the best classes you're going to experience in your career. We make sure of it. You're going to love it. I guarantee you're going to be thankful that you went. Check us out at streetcop.com for all upcoming classes in your area.